When you were 8 years old, a single summer felt like an eternity. School ending in June, the long stretch of empty days, the slow build up to Christmas. Each one felt like it lasted forever. Now, entire years go by and you barely notice. You blink and it's somehow December again. Friday becomes the next Friday. You see a child you haven't seen in a while and they've grown a foot and you swear it was last week. This isn't just a feeling. It's not nostalgia. It's not your imagination. Time actually does seem to move faster as you get older, and there are several real, scientific reasons why. Today we're pulling apart one of the strangest experiences of being human. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what's happening in your brain and what you can do to slow it back down. First, an important clarification. Time itself doesn't actually change. A second is still a second whether you're 8 or 80. What changes is your perception of time, the way your brain measures it, stores it, and replays it later. And it turns out your brain doesn't measure time the way a clock does. It measures it through experiences, novelty, and the density of memories you create. The fewer new experiences you have, the faster a chunk of time feels, both when you're living it and when you look back on it. There are 4 main reasons this happens, and they compound on each other as you age. The first reason is the most intuitive, and it has a name: the proportional theory of time perception. Here's the idea. When you're 8 years old, a single year is 1/8 of your entire life. That's 12.5%, an enormous chunk of everything you've ever known. So that year feels massive. When you're 40 years old, a single year is 1/40th of your life, 2.5%, a small slice. So that same length of time, 365 days, feels proportionally smaller. It's the same reason a $5 bill feels huge to a kid, but barely matters to an adult. Your reference point has shifted. The math gets even more brutal as you go. At 10 years old, the period from age 5 to 10 is half your life. At 50, the period from 45 to 50 is 1/10. The same 5 years, wildly different felt durations. This theory alone doesn't explain everything, but it's the foundation. Your brain's perception of time is relative to the total amount of time you've experienced. Here's where it gets more interesting. Your brain stores time through memories. The more memories you create during a period, the longer it feels in retrospect. The fewer memories, the shorter it feels. And memories form most readily around novelty, new experiences, unfamiliar places, first-time events. When you were young, almost everything was new. Your first day of school, your first time riding a bike, your first lost tooth, first sleepover, first crush, first concert. Every single day was creating dense, vivid, novel memories. So a year of childhood compresses into hundreds of distinct mental snapshots. When you look back at it, your brain replays all of them, and it feels long. Now think about a recent month of your life as an adult. Wake up, commute, work, eat, sleep. Repeat. The routines are so familiar your brain stops bothering to encode them in detail. A month of identical days compresses into one fuzzy blur of work happened. When you look back at that month, there's almost nothing to replay, so it feels like it flew by. Routine eats time. Novelty stretches it. This is why a 1-week vacation in a new country can feel longer in memory than the 3 months of normal life around it. There's also a deeper, more biological explanation. Researchers like Adrian Bejan at Duke University have proposed that the brain itself processes images more slowly as it ages. Young brains have larger, more complex networks of neurons. Signals travel faster. The brain processes more frames per second, so to speak. When you're a child, you're essentially watching the world in high frame rate slow motion compared to an adult. Every moment is rendered in more detail. Every second contains more perceived information. As we age, neural pathways degrade, signals slow down, and the brain takes longer to process the same amount of visual and sensory data. So the same amount of clock time contains less perceived information. In other words, When you were young, you were experiencing more per second. Your 8-year-old summer wasn't just longer because of memory density, it was literally rendered in higher resolution by a younger brain. The seconds were the same, but you got more out of each one. There's one more piece, and it's the most subtle. As you get older, your brain spends more time anticipating the future than experiencing the present. Kids live almost entirely in the now. They're absorbed in whatever is happening right in front of them. Adults are constantly planning. The next meeting, the next bill, the next vacation, the retirement plan, the kid's school year, tomorrow's to-do list. When your attention lives in the future, the present passes through you almost untouched. You barely register it. You experienced Tuesday, but you were thinking about Friday the whole time. So Tuesday is now a blur. Multiply this across years and you get a strange effect. Entire seasons can pass while you were mentally elsewhere. You weren't living that summer. You were already planning the fall. The result is that older brains spend less time fully present, and presence is what creates the felt sense of time. Without it, the calendar just rolls forward and you wonder where the year went. So is there anything you can do? Actually, yes. And it follows directly from the 4 reasons. First, break routines. Take a different route home. Cook a meal you've never made. Sit somewhere unfamiliar to read. Anything that makes your brain pay attention again. Novelty creates memory, and memory creates the sense of time having passed. Second, travel, even small distances. Studies consistently show that time spent in unfamiliar places feels longer in retrospect than the same time spent in familiar ones. A weekend trip can stretch out further in memory than 3 weeks of normal life. Third, be present. Phones and screens are time vampires. They keep your attention in the future or the abstract, never in the room you're actually sitting in. The more time you spend genuinely paying attention to what's happening around you, the more time you'll feel like you have. And finally, learn new things. Skill acquisition forces the brain to encode novel patterns and form new neural pathways. Picking up an instrument, a language, a sport, any of these will literally stretch your perception of time, because your brain is suddenly working hard again. The strange truth is that the people who feel like time is slowest are the ones living the fullest lives, not the ones with the most free time, the ones with the most novelty. If you want a video on what neuroscience says about memory and how to actually remember more of your own life, comment memory below. It's the natural next step from this one. Time isn't moving faster. You're just paying less attention to it. The good news is that's something you can change starting today. Routine eats time. Novelty stretches it. Presence is the price you pay for actually having lived. Subscribe if this is the kind of video you want more of, pulling apart the strange experiences of being human. See you in the next one.